Let me tell y'all something right here, right now. When a leader steps on foreign soil and still makes his people feel like they're sitting right there at home, that's not just politics, that's power. And see, that's exactly what went down when Prime Minister Modi spoke to Indians in the US. Man walked in like he already owned the stage and the whole place lit up. You ever notice how some people don't need an introduction? They are the introduction. That's him. See, here's what folks don't always understand. When a prime minister comes overseas and speaks, it ain't just about handshakes, photo ops, and protocol. It's about something deeper. He's talking to people who've been living miles and miles away from the land they call home. People who carry the passport of another country but still carry the soul of India. And when Modi spoke to Indians in the US, man, he tapped into something powerful. He wasn't just talking policies, he wasn't just talking development numbers, he was talking heart to heart. He made them feel like they never left, like their roots were still right there under their feet, even though the ground was American soil. Now, if you've ever lived away from home, you know that feeling. You're sitting at your desk in New York or working long hours in Silicon Valley or running your shop in Chicago. You're successful. You're building a life, but there's always that ache. You celebrate Diwali with your neighbors, but it ain't the same. You call your mama back in India, but the line crackles and you realize just how far you really are. That's the immigrant heartbeat. Pride mixed with distance. And when he stood up there and spoke, he gave them a gift, the feeling that distance didn't matter. See, when he said, "You are the strength of India, no matter where you are," it wasn't just a line, it was a lifeline. Folks sitting in that audience, some of them been gone 20 years, some of them raising kids who speak more English than Hindi, some of them even wonder if the homeland remembers them. But in that moment, they realized India ain't forgotten them. Their motherland sees them, values them, celebrates them. You could see the tears in their eyes, the pride in their chest. That's a different kind of power. And let me tell you, it wasn't just the older folks. The young crowd felt it too. These young Indians growing up in America, man, they juggle in two worlds every day. At school, they trying to fit in, trying to blend. At home, their parents reminding them, don't forget who you are. And sometimes that's tough. You feel pulled in two directions. But when Modi spoke, he bridged that gap. He made those young people realize they ain't got to choose one or the other. They can be proud of both. They can succeed in America and still wear their heritage like a crown. And that's why the atmosphere was electric. Because in that arena, for that one speech, Indians in the US didn't feel like outsiders. They felt like family sitting at the table listening to a father talking straight to his children. Every word, every pause, it was like he was reminding them, you ain't just employees, you ain't just immigrants, you are India's face to the world. Now picture that energy. Thousands of people standing up, cheering, waving flags. Not just because they heard a good speech, but because they felt included, they felt remembered. That's what unites people. Not just numbers on a chart, not just promises about the future, but that emotional connection that says we belong. Now here's the thing, truth got a funny way of showing up. It don't knock. It don't announce itself. It just walks in the room and suddenly everybody feeling uncomfortable. And that's exactly what happened when Jaishankar stepped in and laid down the facts. America usually tries to keep tucked away. See, America loves telling its version of the story. They put it on TV and the newspapers and them big old think tanks, always pushing the idea that they, the good guys, they the ones running the world and everybody else just playing catch up. But Jaishankar don't play that game. He don't come in loud. He don't come in pointing finger. Nah, he just drops the truth so calm, so steady, it feels like a teacher explaining a lesson you already knew but didn't want to admit. And man, that truth cuts deep. He reminded folks that America don't always tell the full story. They talk about democracy, but they forget their history of meddling in other nations. They talk about freedom, but they ain't quick to mention the times they put their interests above everybody else's. And when Jaishankar speaks, it's like he got a mirror in his hand, holding it up to their face. You ever had somebody tell you something about yourself you didn't want to hear, but deep down you knew it was true? That's the kind of vibe he brought. The beauty of it is how he does it. He ain't aggressive, he ain't shouting. He just got that steady confidence like a man who knows his country don't gotta bow down no more. He'll look straight into the camera, straight into the crowd, and he'll say, India got its own voice and we ain't afraid to use it. And you can feel the air shift when he says it. Because for too long, the narrative was controlled somewhere else. For too long, the headlines came from Washington. The commentaries from London, the judgments from places that thought they had the right to define everybody else's story. But now, here's this Indian diplomat telling the world, hold up, we gonna tell our own story now. And what makes America uncomfortable is that he don't just challenge them. He exposes the contradictions. He'll bring up how India been holding its own without bowing to pressure. How India can make choices based on its own people instead of foreign approval. That hits different, because America ain't used to countries saying no, especially not with that kind of calm authority. They're used to countries either fighting back loud or staying quiet. But this is something new. It's a checkmate move made with a smile. Now picture the audience, Indians sitting there in the U.S., listening to all this. You can see the pride swelling up in them, because here's a man from their homeland standing on the biggest stage saying out loud what they've been feeling inside for years. They know the stereotypes. They know how folks sometimes look at them like they're just workers in tech or shopkeepers on the corner. But now they're hearing one of their own telling America, don't mistake us for weak. Don't confuse silence for submission. India got weight and the world got to respect it. And that truth America tries to hide. It don't just stay hidden once it's been spoken. Once people hear it, they can't unhear it. Once it's out there, it shifts the whole conversation. And Jaishankar, with that calm fire, he made sure folks walked away knowing India ain't just part of the story. India's changing the story. See, here's the shift people gotta understand. India ain't playing second fiddle no more. For a long time, the stage was set up like there was always a lead singer and India was just humming in the background, carrying the tune, but never getting the spotlight. But man, that time is over. This ain't the old India that waited for validation. This ain't the India that needed somebody else to stamp approval before stepping forward. This is a new India, one that walks in with its own rhythm, its own beat, and says, y'all gonna hear us whether you like it or not. You gotta realize how big that is. For decades, the global narrative always had India positioned as the up and coming, the potential, the maybe one day country. Folks used to say, oh, India's developing, India's emerging, India's catching up. But Jay Shankar flipped that whole script. He stood there with a straight face and basically told the world, catching up, we ain't behind, we right here, equal table, equal say, equal respect. And the way he said it, smooth, calm, almost like he was letting everybody in on a secret they should have already known. Now, America and the West, they're not used to that. They're used to countries coming to them for approval, asking for help, seeking permission before making moves. But here's India saying straight up, we don't need no permission. We don't need a cosign. We ain't waiting in line. That kind of confidence shakes up the room. You can see it in the way people reacted, some with surprise, some with respect, some even with a little bit of discomfort. Because the moment India declares itself an equal voice, the whole balance shifts. And you gotta think about what that means for Indians everywhere. Folks working hard in the U.S., people studying in universities, families building businesses. They've been hearing that narrative all their lives, that India was just a developing nation, a place still trying to catch up. But when they hear their leaders say, we ain't behind, we stand beside, that pride hits different. Suddenly they're not just representing a country on the rise, they represent a country that's already risen, that changes how you walk, how you talk, how you hold your head in a crowd. And what's wild is this ain't just talk. India's showing it with action. Tech powerhouses, space missions, diplomatic moves. This ain't background noise. This is lead vocals now. India's not asking to be noticed, it's demanding to be heard. And G. Shankar, he makes sure that message is crystal clear. Every time he speaks, he got that tone that says, we ain't begging, we ain't following, we setting the pace. You ever seen somebody in a room where for years they've been sitting quiet in the corner, but then one day they stand up, clear their throat, and drop a line so strong everybody else gotta shut up and listen? That's India right now. And the thing is, once you claim that voice, you can't go back to being background. The world can't unhear it, can't unsee it. That stage done shifted. And for Indians abroad, man, that's fuel. That's the moment you realize you ain't representing just a country of traditions and culture. You represent a nation that's claiming its spot at the front. And when you carry that kind of identity, you don't shrink yourself in no boardroom. You don't lower your voice in no debate. You walk in like you belong because the message is clear. India ain't waiting for nobody's cue no more. India got the mic. You ever seen somebody living in two worlds at the same time? That's the story of every Indian in the U.S. right now. On one hand, they got the American hustle jobs, studies, businesses, paying bills, raising kids. On the other hand, they carry the rhythm of India in their blood. The festivals, the food, the prayers, the songs their grandma used to hum. And sometimes that ain't easy. Sometimes you feel like you gotta hide one side just to fit in with the other. You in the office in New Jersey trying to sound professional, but at home your mama yelling at you in Hindi to finish your dinner. That push and pull, that constant balance, that's the immigrant way. Now here comes this moment where Modi speaks, Jai Shankar drops truth, and suddenly that balance don't feel like a burden anymore. It feels like a blessing. Indians in the U.S. felt a kind of empowerment they don't always get from the news or the media. See, when you're living abroad, you sometimes wonder, do they see me? Do they respect where I come from? Or am I just another worker, another outsider? But when your leader stands on a global stage and speaks with pride, and your diplomat checks the biggest powers with straight up calm confidence, that message travels straight into your chest. It tells you you ain't invisible, you ain't small, you part of something strong, something global. And that shift is powerful. It changes the way you see yourself. Because before, maybe you kept quiet when somebody made a joke about your accent. Maybe you laughed it off when they teased your food smelling different. Maybe you just swallowed the feeling when people said India was still catching up. But now you got fuel. You know your country ain't in no shadow, and you don't have to shrink yourself either. You can stand tall in that boardroom, in that classroom, in that neighborhood barbecue, and let folks know your culture ain't something to be laughed at. It's something to be respected. And for the younger generation, man, this hit even harder. These kids growing up in America, they living with hyphenated identities, Indian American, always explaining to their friends why they don't eat beef, why their parents pushing them to study harder, why their weddings last 3 days. Sometimes they feel embarrassed about it, but when they see their homeland leaders command a stage, taking respect instead of asking for it, it flips a switch. It makes them proud to be different. They realize that carrying two cultures don't make you less, it makes you more. It means you got double vision. You can see the world from two lenses. You can move in two spaces, and that's a strength, not a weakness. And let's not forget the older folks, the uncles and aunties who left India decades ago with nothing but a suitcase and a dream. They've been grinding for years, sacrificing, working 2 jobs just to make sure their kids had better lives. They've been telling everybody that India is great, but sometimes feeling like the world don't take them serious. Now they sitting in that audience hearing Modi fire up the crowd, watching Jaishankar hold his ground, and suddenly every sacrifice feels worth it. Because their homeland ain't just standing, it's standing tall. And that empowerment, it ain't just emotional, it spills over into daily life. It gives Indians in the U.S. a new way to carry themselves, a louder pride in their identity, a stronger belief that they don't have to dim their culture to shine in America. That's what happens when your leaders don't just represent you, they lift